welcome to the Paradise Recreation and Park District Board of Directors meeting of April the 9th, 2025. First item on of the meeting after calling it to order, which I've just done, is we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Director C. Rodwick,
Here.
Director Robert Anderson,
Here.
Secretary John Stonebreaker,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Mary Belfay, and Chairperson Alma Green.
Present. At this point in time, I want to welcome our guests this evening. I see we have a booing crowd in the room, and welcome Chris, Ron, and is there anybody online this evening, staff, that's
Not at the moment.
not at the moment? Okay, all right, we'll move on to item 2 on the agenda, which is public comment. This is an item on the agenda that affords the attending public in attendance to talk about anything that's not on the agenda today if they so desire. That's their opportunity. So is there anyone here who wishes to speak on a non-agenda item for the benefit of the board tonight? Apparently there's no one who's choosing that option, so that we'll move on. Next item on the agenda, consent agenda, item 3, of which there are 3 items. 3.1, board minutes of the last regular meeting of this board of directors. 3.2, what we refer to as our monthly check register for payment of bills and disbursements. And item 3.3, information only, minutes of the internal staff safety committee meeting of March the 28th. Board members, is there anyone or staff for that matter who wishes any item on the consent agenda pulled off of consent before we entertain action?
I'd like to pull item 3.1.
Okay, let the record show that our clerk wants 3.1 separated from consent agenda. What's the pleasure of the board on the remainder of the consent agenda, items 3.2 and 3.3?
I move to approve items 3.2 and 3.3 on consent.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion that's been made and seconded. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call vote on that motion, please?
Director C. Rodwick,
Aye.
Director Robert Anderson,
Aye.
Secretary John Stonebreaker,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Mary Belfay, and Chairperson Alma Green.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, now we'll proceed to the third item off the consent, which is item 3.1, board minutes of the last regular meeting. Madam Clerk, you want to share why that's pulled and what you want to bring to our attention, please?
Yeah, I caught some mistakes today when I was printing it. On the first page under PRPD staff, Mark Cobb and Catherine Merrifield were not here. Oh, and Sunny Quigley. All 3 were not here, so I pulled that off. And then I added present via Zoom and moved Christy onto that. And then on the second page under old business, there's obviously old business, but in capitals next to old business, I put none. So I deleted that and reprinted. And that's it.
Okay, thank you for those suggested amendments. Do any of the board members have any suggested further amendments to the minutes as presented and suggested to be amended?
I did notice 1.1. It reads Director Anderson led the Pledge of Allegiance.
At that meeting, he did.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. I withdraw the.
Affirming that is because I asked him to, and he did that last meeting. And don't be surprised if I ask some of the other board members throughout the remainder of the calendar year to take a turn in leading the pledge.
Okay. Never mind.
For suggested amendments, I'd like to ask the board to entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion that's been made and seconded to approve the minutes as amended this evening. Madam Clerk, again, can we have a roll call vote?
Director C. Rodwick,
Aye.
Director Robert Anderson,
Aye.
Secretary John Stonebreaker,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Mary Belfay, and Chairperson Alma Green.
Okay,
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
thank you. Moving on, items 4 on tonight's agenda, committee reports, of which we have 3 committee reports to share this evening. First one is item 4.1, Personnel Committee of March 18th. Our chair, will you want to take a lead on that, please? Thank you. Moving on, item 4.2, Recreation Park Committee. Our chair is Director Anderson. Do you want to share anything on that, sir?
Yeah, we met and did a quick short and long-term capital improvement review and reviewed a PG&E easement at Noble Park where they'd like to lease some part of the park for a year. And it sounded like a win-win situation to us.
Yeah. So let me just brief explanation. So we had one that was a permanent, easement related to undergrounding of utilities. This one is a temporary construction easement that would only last a year.
And if I may, I'm on the committee with Rob. My understanding is that PG&E wants to utilize by lease, temporary lease, a portion of our property while they're undergrounding that stretch of Pence Road, not just along our frontage, but quite a distance along Pence Road, and they're coordinating that, hopefully in a timely manner, because the town of Paradise is going to be resurfacing that road segment sometime late this summer, I want to believe, or fall. So just thought I'd share that. Let's move on to item 4.3, Finance Committee. Chair?
We're not done with parks.
Oh, we're not, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Bobby, you're right.
We also toured an acquisition we made last fall, I believe it was, at the at the top of Skyway. And it actually looks like a piece of property that could have a trail on it and has great views of the valley and such. And we also toured a piece of property down at Centerville that it was actually 3 parcels that were owned by the same person, and there's 3 homes on it. It's a really beautiful piece of property, and the Butte Creek runs right through it. Has a great swimming hole. Has great potential for the future. Anything else?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Like you said, we did that was our second meeting of the day. We closed the first one and then we opened and went on a field trip and looked at those 2 properties, one of which we currently own, and the other one is, as you say, down in the Butte Creek Canyon, 3 properties that the owner wishes to sell. And I don't know, we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. I have no idea at this point in time, but it was worth just the field trip, just to see the amenities and the pros and the cons of that part of within our district. So I think that concludes, or no, excuse me, Finance Committee, item 4.3, Mr. Chair.
Yes, we had 3 items. We reviewed the budget update. There was no specific numbers, just an update on where the budget process is at this juncture. We'll probably get into more detailed numbers at this next Finance Committee meeting. Paradise Community Center, we talked about the possibilities of pricing and trying to have the facility pay for itself, and brainstorming ideas of how that can be done, and perhaps getting a permanent tenant in there to offset some of the costs that we'll be incurring. And then just a quick review of the lease request for Noble Park for PG&E. It was a bit of an abbreviated meeting, but that's the gist of it. And Mr. Stoneberg, have you had anything to add?
I believe you've covered it.
And that's it.
Okay, that concludes our committee reports. Moving on to item 5, old business. It appears we have no old business scheduled this evening, so we'll move on to item 6, new business, of which we have 3 new business items. First of which is 6.1, Lake Concal Recreation Feasibility Report. I'm going to turn it over to our district manager and staff to orally present what we have actually present in front of us and lead the discussion on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just quick introduction on it. This is stemming from a MOU that we had with Thermalito Water and Sewer District in October 22. Basically look at the feasibility of recreation at Lake Concal. Excuse me. We also combined a couple of other things in there too. So really brief statement talking about uses and some of the input we got about Crane Park. And then also just a brief update on the school. So it seemed like it was a good place to kind of put in some of that stuff, even though both of those need considerable amount of other efforts associated with it. We're just introducing it tonight. So we're looking for comments. We already received some comments, some list of typos and some other things that need some verification, but we thought it important to get it out as a draft to share. Now, what we see as next steps, if direction from the board follows this, is getting back together with Thermalito Water and Sewer District and looking at some of the recommendations and kind of coming up with a mutual game plan moving forward. So they've been shared this same draft and I've reviewed it, and there are going to be some updates to it. So, for example, a couple of the report, the market research report in there is going to be updated for newer numbers. But I think the idea behind this is to do a couple of things. One is to assemble some of the comments that we got from the public. We got really good constructive comments as for our efforts out there, including a field visit out at Crane Park, where people got to, actually it's one of our first neighbor-to-neighbor opportunities. But we got really great feedback there. People seemed very engaged, had a lot of good ideas. Few concerns were raised, but seemed very addressable. Just, I think the next step is really getting back together with Thermalito Water and Sewer District, seeing what the kind of a joint path forward looks like. Where I can see this going is if they concur, we concur after this. Excuse me, is the next step MOU. So this somewhat parallels like what we did for Paradise Community Center, where we had an initial arrangement, explored some options, came up with a series of studies, information, and then it shifted to kind of a implementation phase. And I could see this doing the same thing with this document being sort of a little bit of a framework on here's the information and kind of some paths forward on it. So it gives us really something to kind of chew on, discuss it. And then I think the idea would be if, with board direction, I would get together with our partners at TWSD and see what makes sense to them, what makes sense to us, and then bring that back to the board, finalize this report, and then have an action that would follow up. So that's happy, excuse me, sorry. Happy to take any comments tonight, but because of the status of this, absolutely can take them afterward. So if you have comments, corrections, any of those things, suggestions, give that to me, and then we can incorporate that in the next version with working with TWSD.
Thank you, Dan. So in essence, what this is you're asking the board through an open public process to entertain a draft document at this point in time, and you're soliciting review and comments and suggested further refinements, corrections, et
yeah.
cetera, et cetera. Let me just pose this question, my fellow board members. Have you all taken the time to read this document, board members?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. And hopefully you all collectively, I know I have, I'm going to hand deliver my hard print copy with my suggested edits and corrections. And I guess some of you have already submitted previously to this, prior to this meeting. Let me correct myself, Dan, but now once you receive all this commentary and corrections, you'll share that with the staff. In the meantime, is it my understanding that um, I can't think of the name of the district down there.
TWSD.
Yeah, TWS, they're doing the same thing at this time. Their staff is running it by their board respectively, asking for input, that type of thing. And hopefully, is there a timeline associated with this dual process? I guess, so we'll know when to expect to come back. And are you going to ask us to entertain adopting actually a report of some kind at some point in time? And when we do, that will be open to the public at that point in time as well, right?
Yeah, I think you laid out the process pretty good. So
Okay.
what I really saw tonight is kind of introduction of this
Introduction.
and putting it out there. We're not asking for acceptance or action
Correct.
per se on it tonight, other than review and comment, which I have received actually good comments from, excuse me, a few board members already.
Good.
So, you know, and we don't even, I wouldn't even want us to do that tonight here. Just give them to me as per the process you said. We take it into consideration and fold it in the next round.
Right.
I think what I'm, and I already have direction for this because that's how I was laying out with the MOU, but to work with TWSD, come up with next steps and what makes sense for each organization. And that absolutely would have to be considered by both boards.
Right.
And so I think that's where it comes into it. It doesn't make sense to have one adopt something and then come back with changes.
Right.
So we wanted to have kind of a unified document after that process, but that would certainly come back here for review and then next step directions.
Excellent. Okay. So we're not going to belabor this today as a discussion item per se, but I'm just going to pose this one question to all the board members. You can respond individually if you so desire, but besides just reading the document, giving your input for corrections, edits, and so forth, how did you feel about the overall format of the document, the report itself? Do you think it's very insightful and informative, that type of thing?
I like 99% of it.
I might add, there might be an entity missing that we're not including, and I don't know where they are at in terms of, post campfire viability, but the Camelot, Association, they were struggling before campfire. And I don't know what their status is. I had very good friends there who lost their home and had to move, but they might be interested in at least being informed as to the direction that our two boards might be moving. A successful program could have a really positive effect on their values of those parcels. So I just, for what it's worth, Camelot.
That's a point well taken. I appreciate your input. With concurrence of the board, can we ask staff to look into that? And
Sure. I will say this, you know, there's a lot of, during this process, we had an opportunity to connect with a lot of individuals and organizations there. Wasn't appropriate to put it here at this level because this is just sort of looking at that big picture view. But we got quite a bit of feedback of folks that would want to partner with us if this move forward. So I think that's a good suggestion on it. But I think we got quite a bit. I would say at least half a dozen different individuals or organizations were interested in the follow-up conversation. So I think it would just expand. I think that makes a lot of sense. Also, we've been reaching out to Concal tribal representation there too. And I think that's another potentially good partnership in that basin.
any further comment from other board members? Yes, Mary.
Yeah, it was extended in 2023. There was a draft made available to TWSD and by that date. So we met the spirit of the MOU there. And I think the board action is just board action. So, you know, I think that the acceptance and all that is outside of the MOU date. So that's why I'd look for, you know, some support validation, I guess, on continuing the conversation with the board. Not really a formal action, but just sort of a, yeah, that sounds good, bring it back. Unless there's any objection to it. That happened. No, it already happened. Yeah, that extension happened. I would say at this point, yeah. I think one way of viewing it, that was looking at the conclusion of that MOU is production of a draft feasibility report. And that happened. It wasn't brought before the board because it was shared with the Thermal Water and Sewer District. It took them some time to review it. And I think the next step is really, rather than extending this, developing the new agreement. Yeah. Great question. So that has been split. They have supplied it. So this, anything that was kind of staff time was staff time and viewed it as sort of like, you know, we want to do this anyway to explore it. Anything that was outside was split with them.
Anybody else from the board wish to further comment? If not, I'm going to open it to the public.
I have a few things to say. So
Okay.
in our summer 2019 listening sessions over at Concow Schoolhouse, the community did express an interest in using Concow Lake for recreation, which some of them had sort of been doing without authorization. So it would be good to have a formal authorized way for the Concow residents to recreate at and in the lake. So I do support using further staff time to coordinate with Thermalito District and other partners in this process. I would say that Camelot Association had one garage and no homes survive campfire, and as of the end of 2024, nothing had been rebuilt. There were dozens of people living in vehicles on roads that have clearly not been maintained in the last 7 years. One of the creek crossings is out and another one is questionable. So I don't know that that association is still functional in a way that they might even be able to partner in this process, but it's certainly worth seeing if anybody answers the phones at Camelot. And while we're talking about other potential partners, I would definitely approach both Explore Butte County and county government itself. There's some campfire recovery aspects to this, and as the county has finally managed to find a way to pay its ongoing operations without further dipping into the piggy bank, some of those campfire settlement dollars might finally be used for recovery projects. And even if that's just in the process of creating a conceptual design and master plan, there might be a couple dollars from one of those entities to help fund the next step. So we do want to create more opportunities for the underserved population of Concow. Happy to have the district as a partner in that process. And I'll have specific nitpicking comments offline.
Okay. I think all the commentary has been received from several board members. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this new business item? I'm not hearing anybody wanting to speak, so essentially the formal action is going to be once we conclude this discussion, we just give you our input individually and after the meeting if necessary. So I think that's
Thank you.
everybody's concurrence. We'll just move on then, right? Okay.
Concur.
Thank you. Okay, item 6.2, LAFCO 2025 election ballot. Staff, can you lead the discussion on that, please?
Sorry. I believe last meeting we had made nominations for this ballot, and now it's come to fruition that we need to vote for it. I'm not really sure what more you would like me to say, but pretty much that's it. We'll fill out the ballot tonight, and I will mail it back.
Just remind the board that we nominated our very own Al McGrean to continue on that board.
Second.
It's been moved, it's been seconded by the board. So can we have a roll call vote on that first?
Director Steve Rodwick,
Aye.
Director Robert Anderson,
Aye.
Secretary John Stonebreaker,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Mary Belfay, and Chairperson Al McGrean.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
Moving right on, item 6.3, under new business, master services agreement with the Blue County Resource Conservation. And even though the agenda says department, we're talking about district here. It's a,
District, should be
Right.
district. I think it's correct in the report.
it is in the report, but anyway.
Yeah, it's on page 56.
Okay, again, Mr. F. can you lead the discussion on this, please?
Sure, thank you. Essentially, this is very much like some of the other short list, what we call short list consultants that has a master services agreement. And then as funding or projects arise, we will put together a specific scope of work and a budget for that particular project. But the overall kind of umbrella agreement is set at, I think it's 60K set for this. And some of the projects that could be part of this include unit plans for some of our parks. So unit plan is essentially a management plan. I think in particular, RCD has been very active with prescribed burn plans and vegetation management, invasive plant management, and so forth. So it just gives us another option to do some of this work. I think another item that they could possibly help with is related to the buffer project and land management, some tools related to that. So I think there's a whole host of services they could provide depending on their current capacity and availability, but it's a good partnership, I think, with a sister agency to do some of the work, take some of the workload off of us at probably a more cost-effective way than if we put it out to a consultant. So, I think there's like us, they have multiple bottom lines, so they need to keep the lights on and doors open, but they have multiple missions to meet. And so I think that makes for a better partnership and them looking for additional funding, for example, if there's a project that we're working on together. So we recommend authorize district manager to complete the agreement after legal review. By the way, because it's a master services agreement, it has already gone through a process with our attorney. So I don't foresee a whole lot of time or objections that she might have to that product. Happy to answer any questions.
Just a quick clarification in the report, the term goes to May 31st, 2028, and in the contract, it's June 30th, 2028. I just want to verify that the term is the June 20th in the contract.
What page is that, Steve?
It's page 60 under term.
Yeah, I think let's make it two, because I think it makes sense. I think it might have changed during the process of our review, but to make it fiscal year related. So I think that makes sense. So just change that in
Okay.
the report to that. Thank you for that. I think it does. You know, what we would typically like to do is have bookends on our agreement. So I think we'll change that to be mutual agreement for a year or something. Just to give us some time if we're in the middle of a project or something and just needs to continue it. That's the main reason for that, to do it, be able to do it administratively. But we'll bring back, to me, it makes sense that the overall agreement would come back to the board and not keep it getting extended. So have a limit on that.
Starting on page 68. For those next couple of pages, that'll be what gets filled out when the project is decided.
Yes. Yeah, I think a couple come to mind. We're working with Butte Fire Safe Council on Kudalink on a prescribed burn, but we need to update the management plan there. And all of our properties, this has not been a practice for us, but all of our properties should have a management plan that I like to see that's updated on a regular basis. So I think they can help with things like that. I think also they can assist us with this buffer project idea on land, kind of what, if a particular site is identified, what are some land management options? So it'd be kind of a menu list, not necessarily a in-depth look at each property, but just kind of, if you're on east side of town and it's steep terrain and it's mixed coniferous forests, what are the objectives you would want to do there? That type of thing. So I think there's some things that could happen more sooner than later, but you're right. Just as far as the process goes, we've set this up and I think it's worked pretty well so far, of having a scope of work, responsibilities, a timeline, and then kind of their mini not to exceed budget for each item. So it gives us a good accountability with whoever we're dealing with. By the way, I'm very familiar with resource conservation districts because I worked for one for a few years. They're great organizations on all. Yeah, so the buffer project will be grant related, and then I think some of the other items, like we've set aside some funds in past years, for example, for to update unit plans. So we do have some funding within our budget, but I think we look for them. A lot of times it's going to be related to something that has a grant that we have some needs for that we don't have internal capacity to do right now. So that's the main goal. You're welcome.
Anyone further, Director Buffet? No? Okay. Director Stonebroker.
I'm very familiar with our friends at the RCD, been in many meetings with Thad and Wolfie and Faith, had conversations with both Wolfie and Dallas Kohler regarding prescribed fire. They are experts in the management of natural landscapes. This is a natural and very good partnership. The fee schedule is much more reasonable than what we had agreed to with Deer Creek Resources. So I'm very happy to have RCD staff doing this work as our partner in the management of our mostly undeveloped properties. So, you know, that we have staff that is much more within partnership, and I would like to see this sort of agreement be a little bit more fleshed out by the time it comes to the board in the future. But I am willing to approve the completion of the agreement in this very skeleton template form.
Just a clarifying question. So when you say fleshed out, the master services agreement is one that we've been using and has that template. Are you meaning just the,
Well, we're sort of looking at the template itself without a whole lot of definition as to what these projects might be. So maybe this could be coming to us a week or two later when we have a better understanding of what the scope would be. Now, again, because I have so much faith in this organization as a partner, I'm willing to give lots of latitude on this project. But there are other cases where we are authorizing the district manager to spend large amounts of taxpayer dollars on we don't really know what. And so even though I'm happy on this particular case, in the future, I would rather have not so much, click here to fill in this blank when it comes to the board. And that's all.
let me take a moment out with that. And sorry, Mr.
Finish the discussion with all the board members, but that'll come back to you, Dan. I think some of the other board members may have some suggested changes to the documents tonight that might comfort John's concern about the lack of some specifics. But before we get there, Rick Anderson, do you have any review comments on this? No? Oh, I'm surprised. Okay. Well, it's my turn. I'm with John. I'm very, very excited and happy to see that this potential partnership is suggested and proposed for our consideration. But I do have the documents themselves were not consistent throughout as far as the terminology, and there are some typos here and there. And despite the fact, Dan, that you shared that this had cleared legal review once before, just as I'm surprised. But having said that, if I may, before we dive into that, those documents, just a general question. In your staff report that you shared with us this evening, you have a not to exceed amount of 60,000, but it doesn't tell me as a member of this body whether that not to exceed dollar amount is for the duration of the 3+ years, or is it per project, or what, or per annum. It's just silent. Then I went into the documents itself, and it seems like it's per project, but maybe I misread it. I don't know.
Let me see if I can explain some of that. All of these master services agreements are tied in with prior authorization for other work. So it just kind of sets up our rules of the game, right? So we wanted to have a limit on it. So that if we had a larger project that exceeded that amount, we weren't coming back. We would come back here for it. It is an umbrella agreement for any and all projects to not exceed 60K. So if there's 10 projects that are under that amount, can't exceed 60K. If there's one project that can't exceed 60K, but that's the limit for it. And
In other words, that's for the potential duration, unless you come back and ask for it. Okay, let's spell that out in your staff report. That's my point. It's minor. It's. I don't mean to be nitpicky, but you explained it just admirably. Okay.
Well, actually, I would take on page 56,
right.
second or third sentence down, I guess. Scope of work is related to consulting services and is listed for not to exceed amount for 60,000. Specific scopes of work and individual budgets will be developed as needs arise for individual projects. So if you take that first item, not to exceed 60K, the other projects listed out, they can't exceed 60K. That's the, as a group.
As a group.
Yeah.
I guess I just would have written it a little bit differently. That's all. It's just the way I read it. Yeah. See, that's right.
Yeah. That's more explicit there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I do have a few minor suggestions if you just bear with me. The master service agreement itself, in the very first page on page 57, the title of the agreement, the word resource is mistyped. Again, I don't mean to, micromanage, but anyway, on that same page, item 2, where we talk about issuance of statements of work, it talks about the client. I'm sure that's a carryover from another agreement. We're not talking about clients in this case. We are the client, the district. You should probably say the district may request services from the consultant, right? Just for consistency, because we identify ourselves.
Yeah, we just need to change it to
Right,
district.
okay. Going on page 59, and maybe this, I don't mean this to be an ego thing. Item 2 at the top of the page talks about you being designated as a project administrator. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But I'm wondering, do we really need to put your name or should we just put your position? Because you never know. Things can change, personnel wise. I'm not saying we're going to see a change, but, just a minor point.
Yeah, traditionally, we have just kept that as district manager as title, so we can remove
Oh,
that.
okay. And then on page 63, this might help John's commentary, where it talks about the description of cooperation. In that first sentence where it says BCRCD will provide consulting services related to land management, I would expand after the word land management. I would just say such as, but not limited to, and list the potential services that you actually had on your staff report in this Exhibit A. Hopefully that's helpful, John. I don't know. But by saying such as and not limited to, at least you have, just the suggestions of a few.
It would be nice to have that in the scope of work as written. So we've, the staff report is not going to be part of this formal agreement. So
Right.
formalizing that, or even if this is just a draft that still has to go through legal review, that helps us understand how the district's money is being spent.
And for the sake of just uniformity, consistency, whatever you want to call it, the master services agreement, I can't find it now. Where'd that page go? Oh, shows it, where was it? No, I went past it. Okay. Exhibit A's and B's need to be filled out per project. That I understand, but there was something in here. What was it? Lost it. The master service agreement itself has a page where it gets executed by representatives of both districts. And that page shows the chairman of Butte County Resources Conservation District being the signator, and our signator is our district manager. This is to the Paradise Recreation and Park District Board of Directors meeting of April the 9th, 2025. First item on of the meeting after calling it to order, which I've just done, is we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Director Steve Rodwick,
Here.
Director Robert Anderson,
Here.
Secretary John Stonebreaker,
Here,
Vice Chairperson Mary Belfay, and Chairperson Alma Green.
Present. At this point in time, I want to welcome our guests this evening. I see we have a a booing crowd in the room, and welcome, Chris, Ron, and is there anybody online this evening, staff, that's
Not at the moment.
not at the moment? Okay, all right, we'll move on to item 2 on the agenda, which is public comment. This is an item on the agenda that affords the attending public in attendance to talk about us, anything that's not on the agenda today, if they so desire. That's their opportunity. So is there anyone here who wishes to speak on a non-agenda item for the benefit of the board tonight? Apparently, there's no one who's choosing that option, so that we'll move on. Next item on the agenda, consent agenda, item 3, of which there are 3 items. 3.1, board minutes of the last regular meeting of this board of directors. 3.2, what we refer to as our monthly check register for payment of bills and disbursements. Okay, we're back after our make sure everybody's online and recording. So at this point in time, the board needs to entertain an action for our discussion on new business item 6.3. That's the pleasure of the board.
Does that include changing the signer for the district?
It does in our interpretation of it.
Okay, very well, thank you.
It's board's prerogative. You know, I think I'll put it this way. I think what a lot of RCDs historically, they've had a board and then they've had staff, not necessarily district manager either or general manager. So it's very typical for them to do it that way. The larger ones will do it like we do. I don't think it really matters. It's just authorizing the agent signatory. If you authorize me to complete it, if you want the chair's name on it, we'll complete it with the chair's name on it. So. That's referring to notices, not necessarily the chair. So that's notices of any changes to the agreement. So for example, I would suggest we could keep that as is because it's really the signatories aren't necessarily the people conducting the work. So the notices need to go to kind of, if there's something timely, board members may get it on a monthly basis, whereas they need to get it to either district manager for action.
Can I recommend that we just keep it with the noted corrections and suggestions? Because we know what those are, because we discussed it. And if we're gonna switch, in the discussion, we talked about Al being the signer. So that's just a very long motion to write out.
Complete the agreement after legal review related to the corrections and votes that were made during this.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we've had a motion that's been made and seconded. Madam Clerk, will you have a roll call vote, please?
Director Steve Rodwick.
Aye.
Director Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Secretary John Stonebreaker.
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Mary Belfay. And Chairperson Al McGreen. Motion carries with 5 ayes.
Good. That concludes our new business items this evening. We're now moving to agenda item 7, district report. Staff, can I take lead on that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So have a few bits of information here. Updating on the Paradise Community Center. They're working on the completion of the building and get it signed off. We were hoping to bring it back to our board in May. It looks like that's going to be delayed until they get some of their conditions and, you know, finishing up the project all straightened out. So I anticipate we'll hear back from them shortly on when that's coming back before the board. At this point, I think what may happen if it comes to us at the June meeting, we can keep with the July 1st transfer date. If it comes after that, then I think that's probably wise to extend that transfer date out to give them enough time to finish that completion. The other side of that is the grant, or that the transfer agreement goes to the end of the year. So there's ample time to modify it within that spirit. But I think getting that transfer date nailed down would be important.
A suggestion,
Yes.
when all is settled down and the ink is dry, perhaps we can schedule one of our board meetings there to introduce the public to the facility.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have actually a lot of plans for like how to get various series of events to get people acclimated to that as a new address to utilize. They did have a sneak peek a couple weeks ago, I guess now. Small group and promoted by the Paradise Community Center nonprofit folks, but a lot of beaming faces, nice booming sound system that our staff has been trained on and seems to really like, and just you know, I think very positive atmosphere. So I know some of the board members had attended that, may have some comments.
So it won't be ready for senior prom or anything for Paradise High.
Well, actually, one of our staff members is very keen on real senior prom. So a senior citizen prom. So that may be coming up here once it gets transferred. We'll have a lot more details on the future with that.
Dan, do you want to point out, we were there for that invited tour and everything, and they're still, and I heard you say earlier during your discussion with us that they're on track as far as the construction, and they might finish by mid-May or shortly thereafter. But correct me if I'm wrong, while we were on the tour, I think it was explained to me, the one that's going to have the commercial kitchen, they don't have enough funding to build all the facilities for the commercial kitchen. So this will be handed to us as is without that. So as part of your process working on the MOU for the new facility, how's that going to be addressed? Are we going to be on our own dime to do all the internal?
That's actually one of the key points that we're working on.
It is, okay.
Yeah, so there is effort on both sides to try and develop some funding source or solution to have that solved
Right.
before it's transferred.
And
So I think that's one of the reasons.
So as you work through that, perhaps you might identify something where both entities, us and them, we go public and ask other service organizations and so forth, maybe to submit grants and so forth to help infill the commercial kitchen. Is that what you're thinking?
I think it's more detailed than what I can get into right now.
Okay, that's
So
fine. Just so I don't ask.
I think in concept, though, the idea is to get that rectified funding source, or at least a substantial funding source that could then be utilized for making that kitchen whole and functional.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Our staff and Mr. Stonebreaker attended the Butte County Planning meeting for a rezone review of the property at Lake Ridge that we acquired in 2022. This is something we suggested Planning Commission shortly after purchase of the property, or excuse me, planning staff, to look at having that rezone for public uses that match the other property that we own or manage. Received favorably by the Planning Commission to be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors. I believe it is May 13th.
Okay.
But they'll keep us posted. Keep an eye out for it.
quick question, is that pending action at board level, assuming the rest of the process evolves in May? If the board acts favorably on that, that would be introducing an ordinance for first reading to change the zoning, and then they'd have to subsequently have a second meeting to adopt the ordinance per
Yeah,
se?
you know that process far better than I, but
Yeah,
I think
and-
it does open up that direction of opening up
Okay,
for. a
so
hearing.
what that's telling me, anyway, being an old retired professional planner, the change of the zone won't be legally in effect probably until, oh, I want to say possibly mid-July or something like that. Does that have any, that's not going to delay what's underway as far as our design team is concerned, as far as Lake Ridge is
It
concerned?
does a little bit, and I'll tell you why, because if it is rejected, then it's gonna be additional costs for us to go back, probably on the order of 12 to 20,000 to do a special use permit.
I would contest that. The plans that we have been shown do not require this rezone. So in October, the RPC was shown a diagram that only had a driveway and a parking lot there, which could exist under the current zoning. So there would have to be some proposed use that does not fit with the current zoning that would justify the expense and delay of a conditional use permit or going through the full rezone procedure.
That's not quite correct. So what we've been told from informal conversations with the county is that they would have to retain their buffers around their required easements around the property. So some of the amenities that might cross boundaries would have to get a special use permit. I don't know if Mr. Stoneberg wants to tell the board his opposition.
I was going to mention this later, but if you want me to talk about it right now. So the seller of this parcel and I had a conversation some hours after the planning commission meeting. He is a co-owner of other property that adjoins the PID property that we are leasing and is somewhat eager to unload at least a portion of that. It's currently listed at $179,000 for 14.8 acres, which is a much better deal than we got for the subway parcel. So my objection at the time that the district chose to acquire the subway parcel at the cost of $100,000 plus the cost of due diligence for 1.2 acres was that it might be later dispersed as surplus. And with the potential acquisition of property currently owned by CHIP and the potential acquisition of property owned by the Magalia Partnership, including Harold Stimson, it does seem that this might still eventually be relinquished as surplus, and it would be much easier for the district to relinquish that if it remained zoned mixed use as was specified within the Upper Ridge Community Plan. It also seems to be a thumb in the eye of everyone who participated in the Upper Ridge Community Plan process that the community and planning staff and the commission and the Board of Supervisors all agreed that Magalia needs to have a place to put affordable housing and that that was the best place to put it. And so when the current general plan specifies that everything on the east side of Lake Ridge, except the parcel that was acquired in 2009, should be both designated mixed use and zoned mixed use, to have district staff use our letterhead to send a last minute letter to have the planning commission consider something that was not properly agendized seemed to fly in the face of all of that year-and-a-half long public process. So I and other residents of the Upper Ridge were displeased that we were not consulted in that. So the property that is east of the Dollar General. So there's one. Okay, so okay, if you go up Skyway and then make the right at the gas station and go past the Dollar General, then there's property that is between the Dollar General and the property which we are leasing. So that has been on the market for a long time, and the partnership is eager to unload it. So I had a conversation with one of the partners who owns it and said that he had approached district staff with the prospect of donating a portion of that to the district, and district staff was not interested. That's what I was told by the co-owner. It connects to the property which we lease, not the property which we own.
Is this the old bike park?
Yeah, that's a portion of it, yes.
Well, I don't know if this is the right format to do a deep dive into that particular topic. But I, for one, do not recollect at the time that we acquired the parcel in 2022 that we ever went on record publicly saying that we could set that aside if necessary at some later date for declaring that surplus property. The intent was we wouldn't have bought it in the first place if it didn't have plans to have it under our ownership to help facilitate the pending, still not completed master design for amenities for the park. So I don't know where that's coming from, John, but you know, that's fine. Maybe we should agendize this for another day, perhaps. I don't know what the, you know.
I would be happy to have that conversation, whether that has to be a special meeting given the potential May 13th hearing. But I'd like to have a conversation about that as well as the use of our letterhead.
I don't understand that question about the letterhead.
Well, so I've had conversations with County CAO Andy Pickett that frequently on the supervisor's agendas, there are letters either for ratification or for the board to consider before CAO Pickett sends it out on the county letterhead. This isn't talking about like ordinary emails, but when you format a proper business letter with the letterhead and all of that. And Andy said that sometimes there'll be timely items that if he's received advanced direction, he might send the letter and then bring it back for ratification rather than bring it to the board before he sends it out. So sometimes one or more board members will suggest changes to the wording, or there might be one member out of the board in opposition. Just also getting that agendized brings it before the public eye, so then constituents can make suggestions. That, you know, there have been cases where I, as a member of the public, brought something to the attention of the board, and then a change was made to the wording before it was sent out on county letterhead. So, you know, that I don't want to go and have a conversation right now about something that was not agendized. I'm sort of asking this to be agendized. That's not, I don't know, either as a voter or as a board member, what district staff might be representing as the policy of this district. So even if that were just to come back, that we sent this letter to another agency on our letterhead, and then the board says, yes, that's fine, we support that. That's what we would like to see made more transparent.
I know that you know this, but I've made several attempts to have us have a meeting one-on-one. And I think that would shed a lot of light on processes and how we conduct business. And I think a lot of the background that you're talking about is not a good use of the board's time, because there have been policies set out in the past that would help you to understand the context of some of our actions. So I would encourage you, if you would be able to get back to me with those dates that I provided on a meeting to go over district policy and some of the background. It may help you become better informed. Okay, continuing on, we have attached with the routine reports. There was a correction that Director Belfay mentioned on the reserves. That's been partially collected. There's a question we have, by the way, on what information should be presented on that. So we're working with Rick from CSDA to do that. I'm referring in particular to page 87. Yeah. So Director Belfay last time mentioned the totals were incorrect on there. So the subtotal has now been updated but there was a question I think our accounting staff had on the total reserve accounts and what needed to be included in that. So Catherine is working with Rick from CSDA on that part. We've also attached, related to finance, little sneak peek that'll be coming back to finance, but on pages 90 and 91 has a preliminary draft budget that needs to be refined, but it gives us some good starting point to work with our finance committee to go dive into some of the details on it and the assumptions behind it. We did get some good feedback last time, by the way, and Director Stoneberger has a copy of it now, but our district report and narrative, I simply posed a question. Some agencies just have their budget without any narrative, if that was still useful for us. And we got pretty strong feedback that it was, and we'll continue that practice, which I think has been actually good for our staff too, to kind of lay it all out and lay out all the assumptions and things to look for. So that'll continue. Seems like it. And there is a summary on the next page of the district report. Why don't we hear from our friends in the recreation world about a very busy spring coming up? And I think it's really, we're in Jeff season right now, or spring.
Hello, this is Jeff Daly. So yeah, just last month, Scott and I presented the recreation eval report, and since then, well, the very next week after that, we did a presentation at the California Parks and Recreation Society annual conference, and I don't know if Scott's going to say more about that in a minute or not. I guess not, as presented under outreach, but. Things I'd like to talk about that I did not have in here is the aquatics. It seems like this year the aquatics is getting going sooner than it has in the past. We are working on interviewing lifeguards. We've got about half a dozen good prospects for lifeguards that are coming in, and interviewed about 4 or 5 of them so far. A new thing, brand new this year, that we're working on is having the Paradise Junior High School coming over to the pool for some PE classes in mid-May. So that's kind of exciting. It's going to be kind of a rental. They're going to go over there and do PE instruction for 2 weeks in a row, in addition to the piranhas being in the pool and PRPD's lifeguard training that will happen in later May. So pool's about to get up and running. It's still early April, but that's coming up in May. The kids, free kids fishing day, that's the big one. That's this Saturday, April 12th at Paradise Lake. Just today we planted 3,500 pounds of fish up there, of trout. That was the second batch out of 3. We do one more tomorrow, leading up to the kids fishing day. The lake has been closed as of Monday to fishing and usage. So there's been barricades and signs up there, stuff on our website. I think we've gotten a few calls of people that have gone up there, but for the most part, people are pretty understanding. We do keep the people out the week leading up to it to keep pressure off the fish, and especially with the new fish plants, just to have the fish good and hungry for this coming Saturday. It should be a great day. We've had, as I said in the report here, we've had a huge outpouring of sponsors for the event. Donating money, prizes, gift certificates, lots of different things that we use for raffles. In addition to getting fish from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, we do purchase fish from Mount Lassen Trout Farms, and they're expensive. So a lot of that money goes towards the purchase of fish. And like I said, prizes. We provide hot dogs, chips, and a drink to all the kids that come. So we're in the process of getting that stuff rounded up. The Golden Gate Craft Fair is coming up on April 26th and 27th. That is looking really good. We've got about 75 craft vendors and 7 food vendors signed up. And in talking to the office today, there's several more that haven't been put in the registration yet. So there's actually more than that. So that's coming along really good. In between there, too, we are having our Easter egg hunt. Not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. So 3 weekends in a row, we have things happening. I know the community The Magalia Community Center has an egg hunt this coming Saturday as well that we have some staff helping at, an early Easter for that. And that's about all I had to report, unless you guys have any questions. Yeah. They start May, I think it's 12th, May 12th. Yeah, they're planning on bringing kids over. I think they said 6 periods throughout the day. And I'm not sure how they're going to get them dressed down, dry it off, get back to the, but that's their problem. We're going to be providing the lifeguards and the pool. So
I know my staff's been speculating, are they going to go back in their bathing suits? Are they, how they're going to get dressed and all that? But I guess it's on the school for that.
mm-hmm. Welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, Jeff's been, now this is a busy time of year, so there's a lot of different events but a lot of good feelings about those events. So, you know, I think the Kids Fishing Day is a point, case in point that has a lot of solid volunteers and support, and we need that help. Jeff?
I forgot to thank Lori McCausland, teacher Lori, for being the person that's going out and getting a lot of the sponsors that we've gotten over from her 20, 30 years of relationships she's built up with people. A lot of it is her walking in the door. Every company from Dutch Bros to Les Schwab to every company around she's gone into and got them to give something for the fishing derby. So didn't want to forget to thank her.
And that's good segue because when we attended the CPRS conference, we saw pictures of teacher Lori. We nominated her for an award, but it was popping up on the screen during those sessions. And I don't know how many people you think were in the big room, a couple thousand? 1,500? Yeah, so you know, a lot of people got to see her and her element up there, even though it was not mentioned. It was just sort of running in the background. That conference, we had Christy, Jeff, Scott, and Kristen and myself speak to provide a presentation there. We were at, I think, a tough time slot, but seemed to get really good response from folks that attended. And there we are in action there. So that looks empty with that picture, but we had more people in the room than that. Yeah. Mark should have taken a better picture than that, but that's what we have. They did a great job. I think I was really pushing them to do professional development, us go as a group, and then even present. So that was a great experience for us as a team. And then, like I said, we got favorable feedback from a lot of people afterward chatting about it. We participated in a stop at Concal for a neighbor-to-neighbor effort with Butte Fire Safe Council. Presentation there. They asked great questions. They wanted to know a bit about our efforts there, look at some of the signs. Matthew Wilford from the Concal then provided a little bit update perspective from Native people's standpoint. Seemed like a really great event. So I'm glad that we were able to participate in it. It seems like ages ago, but we have printed out, published our activity guide. And so that's kicking off, I think hopefully it turns into some interest and programs that get going there, but the staff did a great job in how that looked. I love the fact that we had a kid's artwork as our cover. So that was a nice touch on there that gave us free content, made a kid feel good out there. So we appreciate that. Rotary had approached us about doing a project, a peace pole project and a tour that happened at Billy Park last month. And we have a whole host of volunteer programs, anything from getting rid of broom to continuing volunteer efforts. So that's going to pick up just as we get into the season. And I don't have a lot of details on this right now, but apparently the town has received or is getting in the process of receiving the agreement for a heat extreme heat grant program where they're going to look at facilities, needs in a community and trying to identify what's needed in the community. So they had a little bit of a kickoff meeting on it that I participated in a couple weeks ago. And I think there's really going to kick off. This is kind of a pre-kickoff because they don't have the agreement, some of the things in place, but they're going to return with that agreement and an agreement with us. So that'll come before the board, have a lot more details on it then. Happy to answer any questions board members may have.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions from the board on district report?
They're planning on doing a pretty extensive, I mean, they just did their report not too long ago. They're going to do a year wrap up that is going to put them in the position to do some public speaking practice and those type of things. So they don't want to do a quick like district report type thing. They want to really get into the, it's one of the biggest things that the program has done. So they want to really get everything out of it that they can, which means it's going to be a couple of months and they'll wrap it into all the other things that one of the things they've got coming up is I think it's a week-long excursion. And so they're going to report on the week-long excursion at the same time as they're reporting on the other really big things that they're doing. So it's coming, but I'll make sure that they know specifically whom requested it. Mm-hmm.
I was going to add just one other thing to that. They also, this will show up on the next report, but attended the Banff Film Festival. There's a van that went down on Friday, took a whole cohort of students from especially Upper Ridge that had not been exposed to that type of event. And I think it really opened up their eyes to, wow, look at this interest in the local community on outdoor experiences. And I had a chance to talk with Kelly at intermission a bit, and she said they're kind of a little bit googly eyed about what they were seeing. And they had great presentations that night. So really good experience, I think, for them.
Okay, well, at that point in tonight's agenda, we'll share board comments. Shall we start tonight with Director Roderick? Any board comments to share with the evening?
I've got nothing for the time being. Just want to say there, depending on timing, I might have to miss committee reports. I've got a grandchild on the way in a couple, 3 weeks locally, so I might, odds are I'll be there, but just heads up.
Director Bradford? Okay, thank you, Ron. Director Steinbreaker.
So I have been to fewer government meetings this past month as my health has limited me somewhat, but I did have a very interesting, not publicly noticed meeting also on March 27th, where we got the president of Oroville Hospital to come up to Magalia. He made a comment about how beautiful it was up there and also showed a lot of interest in, for example, rotating specialists through one of the unused buildings up there so that both Magalia and Paradise patients could have, for example, post-procedure follow-up office visits here on the Ridge. And that was made possible by a lot of diligent work from my friend Sheriff Honey, using his long relationship with Bob Wentz. And I wanted to say that that really developed through my years of advocacy as well as the sheriff's efforts. And this is one of the ways in which me going to all of these damn meetings has provided some benefit to our constituency, even outside my work here in the rec district. So I hope to continue that, going to PID meetings and county meetings and all of that as much as my health permits. Thank you.
Okay, and Director Anderson.
I did some doom the room up at Crane Park with Sophia and Annalise and Butte County Fire Safe Council. They had done some great clearance for a couple of acres near the road. Looks great. Of course, they cut out a bunch of trees we had trimmed up so that they could grow. But other than that, that's it.
Thank you, Robert. I'll try to be brief as best I can. I've attended multiple meetings since our last board meeting, some of which I'm not going to mention, but on March the 17th, there was a special town council meeting in the mid-afternoon time, and I caught wind of it and decided just to attend, just to find out what was going on. And it was very enlightening. It was a meeting where the council and the public works director had to share the reality of the situation about their sewer project, that it's not fundable. It's impossible to come up with the funding for that. And so after a long discussion on that, it was pointed out that some monies that the town has through the Community Development Block Grant Recovery Program may have to be shifted around to go towards an alternate design for taking care of wastewater in a portion of the community. So that kicked off that process, and council decided to create an ad hoc committee to have several meetings once a month to ask for public input for alternative designs for dealing with the wastewater situation, and that's underway. So I just wanted to share that. On the 24th of March, I was really felt honored and pleased that both myself and District Manager Essif were asked and invited to be interviewed as part of a documentary that's being created in regards to the completion of the Honeyman Covered Bridge project. So stay tuned. Hopefully that documentary will be made available. I don't know when, but it was an interesting experience doing the interviewing. We had a standard once a month Rec and Park Committee meeting, and you've already heard about that. That was on the 25th of March. On the 27th, you already heard about this. Dan pointed out that the board of directors for the old, I still want to call it the senior center, folks, but they had by invitation only, the open house of the Paradise Community Center, and that was well attended, and a lot of good interaction and discussions took place, and really impressive to see how that's turning out as a future facility that hopefully we'll be honored to open up to the community for various uses and so forth. As you all know, once a month, Butte LAFCO usually meets the first Thursday of every month. I attended that meeting on April the 3rd. On our agenda, it was very fascinating. We had a public hearing. LAFCO staff produced municipal service reports for 3 community service districts here in Butte County. And these 3 community service districts are the the Richardson Springs Community Services District. I don't know if some of you recall we had a retreat at the facility there at Richardson Springs, but I was not even aware at that time when we attended that it was subject to a district in the immediate environs that manages that operation there and its sewer system and a few other things. But anyway, they done MSR for that, they being the staff, and we heard that in conjunction with MSRs that were prepared for the Buzztail Community Services District and the Berry Creek Community Services District. Yeah, Buzztail, probably John knows the location of this, but and I may be wrong on this, but Buzztail Community Services District is partially on Doe Mill Ridge and near, I want to say, Butte Creek Canyon west of Magalia Ridge area, perhaps.
Yeah, it's on the ridge. It's not in the canyon, but
Yeah.
yes, it's accessed off of Doe Mill Road.
Correct. Thank you. So that was a very fascinating process to see these three municipal service reviews, and the other one was Berry Creek. So we had the hearing, took input, excellent reports, learned a lot from it, and LAPCO approved them, adopted them. The other thing that was on our agenda that day was our proposed fiscal year budget for fiscal year coming up 25, 26, and what LAFCO normally does is they entertain that tentatively, introduce it, and then after a committee has looked at it, which I served on, and then we approved it tentatively to be shared again before we finally adopt it sometime in June, I believe. So that pretty much is the extent of that meeting. And then last but not least, on the 8th, which was just yesterday, believe it or not, Mary and I mentioned this, but we attended our second PRPD Town of Paradise Liaison Committee meeting, and I thought it was well formatted and some good open discussions that talked about roads and our projects as well. It sounds like we've got a lot of things happening, and we will meet again sometime in July, I believe it was. Is that correct?
July, and hopefully at the Paradise Community Center.
That would be nice. So one last thing I'd like to share just openly. It's my understanding, and I really endorse this, that our district manager ran this by me as chair this current calendar year, and he's trying to attempt to reach each and every board member and try to coordinate offering himself to meet with you on at least maybe a quarterly basis throughout the calendar year. And my understanding is most of you have accommodated that. You've locked that in, but if any of you on the board has not done it at this point in time, please do. It's extremely important, and I think it'd be beneficial. That's all I have. If there's no further comments, then we will declare the meeting adjourned at this point in time. Thank you, everyone.